the previous video, we went over how you can use R in Power BI to make additional changes to your data set that are required by the visual. And we were able to get up to line 44 in this particular script. In this video, what we would do is go over how you can use variables in R to set certain features of the visual, such as the chart title, the subtitle, captions, and any type of annotations that you may need to have. And the visual that we're creating in this example, you'll see that we have a chart title, a chart subtitle, a caption, and also an annotation that gives additional information that we want to share with the end user of the report. Now, this, one of the things that you gain in R is you have the ability to add subtitles and captions to your chart. In Power BI, you have the ability to add a dynamic title to the chart, but there's no feature currently where you can use a subtitle. You can assign a subtitle or a caption to your chart. Many times, that type of functionality would be greatly beneficial to the visual that you're trying to create. So let's go over how to create each one of those attributes of the chart. We'll start off by going over the variables that we create in this particular visual for our titles. And you'll see that two of our titles are static. And I'm talking, right now I'm referring to starting in the script at line 49. So in line 49, we create a variable for our chart main title. And you see that's a status string, which says that the percent of government expenditures on education. That is the main title of our chart. So we create that variable. The next variable that we create is a variable for our subtitle. And this variable is a basic dynamic variable. You'll see that we are concatenating two strings. One string is a status string, which is the top 7 ranked countries and then the dynamic portion of the string is a variable for report year. Now that particular variable is based off of the year that the data set we're using represents. So in order to build out this title, we use the paste function to concatenate both of those variables. Execute the code, you'll see that the output of that code is shown in the console, and in this particular case, it is the top 7 ranked countries in 2013. That's our main title. Now, the function that we use to create this title is the paste function, and this function you'll use a lot in your, throughout your R development. It is a very powerful function that you can use to concatenate different strings together into one. And you'll see that in this scenario, what we're doing is we're concatenating a static string, which is the top 7 ranked countries, and with a dynamic variable report year, and that string that we're creating is based off of those two strings with a delimiter of an open space. The second or the third thing that we're going to create is the caption for the chart. Now, when you're sharing information or a visual with someone that uses a public data set that you need to share with the end users, the source of that particular data set, a very easy way to do that is to include the information where the data came from in the caption. And we're doing exactly that here in line 51 by creating a caption variable that contains the URL to the location where we retrieve the data set that's used for the visual that we're creating. Next, we move to the section of our script where we create the variables that are needed to build out the annotation that we have on our chart. If you look at the chart, you'll see that the annotation that we have for the selection of 2013 is an annotation that says Zimbabwe spent 28.9% more of their expenditure on education than Belize. So in order to build this out, we would need to have variables that we can use for the dynamic portions of this particular annotation. And the dynamic portions of this particular visualization or this annotation is the country that is in the first place, which in this scenario is Zimbabwe, and then the calculation here, this 28.9%, that's dynamic. We need to supply that, and also the country that is in the seventh place or last place in this visual, which is Belize. So in order to build this annotation, we can start off by using the variables that you see from line 54 to line 57. Let's go over each of those variables in detail and explain how they are built. So the first one that we will go over is the max country, and the max country in this case is Zimbabwe. So to create this variable, we need to get the country that is in the first place, and we can do that by executing line 54. In line 54, what we're doing is we're getting the country that's in the first place by subsetting the country field using the rank field and returning the rank field that's in the first position. So we subset the country in this portion of the code, and we do that by saying that return the country where the plot where the rank field in the plot data frame is equal to 1. Now, if you recall, the way this subsetting works is that this right here returns a Boolean vector that returns false in the records where this condition is not met, and true in the record where the condition is met. And the records, the positions where the condition is met, where it evaluates it true, that is used to subset this, and only those records will be shown. So if we run this complete code where we're subsetting the country field based off of where the rank is equal to 1, we run that, you'll see that it results in a factor where we have one element, and that one element being Zimbabwe. Because we're trying to use this in the dynamic portion of our annotation, we don't want our variable to be in the factor data type. We want it to be just a regular character vector with a length of 1. And in order to do that, we use the paste function, the paste0 function. Now the paste0 function, that is used when your separator is equal to an empty string. So when you don't have a delimiter, you're not using a delimiter, you're just using an empty string that's a delimiter. In those situations, you can use the paste0 function. And what we're doing here, because we want the output not to be in a character vector with multiple elements, we want it to be in a character vector with just one element, we use the collapse argument in the paste0 function. And it said what it does is it will collapse all the elements that's in the character vector into a character vector with that's a length of 1, and all the elements, they will be combined with a delimiter that you specify. In this particular situation, we're specifying a delimiter of a empty string. So when we run this line of code using that paste function, if we look at the output of that code, you'll see now, instead of having a situation where we had a character vector that's in this particular output, where we have not a character vector, we actually have a variable that represents a factor data type. We went from a factor data type to a character vector down here that we want, which is a character vector with a length of 1. So that's how we get our max country that is used in the annotation right here. And in this case, you'll see it's Zimbabwe. To get Belize, we use a similar type of method. And you'll see the only difference is that there's two differences I want to point out. One is instead of using the first place, one for first place, we're using 7 for the last position because if you recall, in our filter function in line 44, we're only looking at countries that are in the top 7th positions. And another thing that I want to point out is in the collapse, we are using this right here for our delimiter to, that we use if we were to collapse a bunch of elements together from this output. Now, going back to line 54, in the data set that we have, I believe it's close to 20 years worth of data in the data set. There are no situations in that data set where there are ties for the first place in that particular data set. But there's one situation in that data set where there is a tie for the 7th place. So in that particular year where we have that tie, those two countries will show in the annotation and they will be separated with this ampersand sign. Powerful feature. So let's execute line 55 and get the min country. I believe we already did that. So now what we need to do is we need to get the information we need to calculate the calculation we have here, where we calculate how much more did Zimbabwe spend in relative terms compared to Belize. So to do that, we take the min value, we use the min function to get the min value of the total expenditures in our data set. And we also use the max function to get the max value of the values in the total expenditure percent column. That information is all the information that we need to build out the annotation that we see in this visual. Now let's go over how to take those variables and build out the dynamic annotation. So we have all the information we need to build out our dynamic annotation. Now what's left to do is to build it. And we do that in our script starting in line 59 down to line 69. If you take a look at the annotation that we have in this visual, you'll see that there's a wrapping of the annotation. You'll see that if we try to fit Zimbabwe spent 28.9% more of their expenditures on education than Belize, if we try to fit that on one line, we don't have enough real estate in our visual to fit that. So one of the nice things about ggplot is that it gives us access to functions that we can use to determine how we want that behavior to be, how we want the information that we have in our annotation to display on our screen. We don't have to worry about going with defaults that are built into the visual. We can customize how we want that information to be displayed. And the function that we'll use, the start function that we'll use to control how the information is displayed on our visual is the string, the str, which stands for string underscore wrap function that is available in the string R package. The nice thing about this particular function is it gives you the ability to control a lot of things about how a string is displayed on your in your visual. It not only gives you the ability to control how wide the text would be before it will spill over and create a new line, it also allows you to control things like the indent of your first line and also the exdent, EXDENT, that is used to control how the subsequent lines of your text is indented. So in this particular case, the string that we're building for annotation is built in the paste function. So let's go over that first. We'll go over the actual annotation and then we'll go over how the annotation is formatted. The annotation is built using the paste function, and we use this several times and several different versions of it. We use the paste function, this regular one that we're using now. We also just use the paste 0 function earlier in the script. So the paste function is used again to concatenate multiple strings into one, and it allows you to determine what you want your denominator to be. So we're concatenating the max country, which in this case is Zimbabwe, and then the word spent, and then the result of a calculation that will give you the percent increase that Zimbabwe spent on education compared to Belize. And we accomplish that using the mathematical formula that you see here. Then it concatenates to that more of their expenditures on education then. And then the last element that it concatenates is the country that's in the min country position, which in this case is Belize. So we have this string, and again, if we were just to print this string on a visual, it would be way too wide to fit on the visual. If we set the maximum width of the line to 35, then the annotation will fit in the visual. So in this particular case, when you get to a situation where the string is at that 35 max width, the remaining string will spill over to a new line, and that will keep on happening until all of the text has been printed on the screen. And you'll see here we set that property of the string wrap with the width property. So now we have everything we need in our R script. We have all the variables we need. We have the data set that we need to build a visual. So in the next and last video in this series, we will show how to build the visual that we see in the lower right hand corner of the screen using the ggplot2 package.